What's up? What's happening? What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Animation Station, number one destination for anything and everything animation, including a certain sponge who lives in the pineapple under the sea. I'm your host, Jack Small, and today, I'm back. As you guys know, yesterday, or this morning, actually, because I kind of fell asleep while this was in the editing stage because it was sent so late. Anywho, as you guys know, last time, my buddy Spider Phantom took over the channel for a bit and reviewed Mermaid and Barnacle Boy 5 and New Student Starfish. And his reviews were really good as always. Like I said, he always puts out great content. So I thank him for his help. And we initially wanted to do a discussion on UGG since it's a double-length special. But since he does have class today, we're going to have to figure out a different episode to talk about. Might be a special, it might be an episode, or heck, it just might be the movie. Who knows? Anywho, I'm on my own for this one, and we're talking about a second double-length special, and don't worry, this one's far better than Party Pooper Pants, called UGG, or as it's better known, SpongeBob BC, before comedy. So this episode is a very unique and interesting one, because it takes place not in the normal Bikini Bottom that we know. Instead, it takes place, as the narrator says, 100 million years ago, back to the years of the caveman, the Neanderthals, the dawn of time, and, all that. So why don't we start by looking over the basic episode itself. So, in this special, it starts with Patchy trying to, make his special feel as authentic to the caveman times as possible. He talked about all the things that you could do, like draw on the walls and no one yell at you, much easier to hit a baseball because they had giant wooden rock mallets to swing at each other. Or clubs, sorry, not mallets, clubs. Giant rock clubs to swing at each other. And your clothes always matched because they never change. Yeah. Stuff like that. And then Patchy comes in as as not the pterodactyl, and pretty much outright says to Patchy that the future is really where it's at, and that the prehistoric stuff is lame. And then they argue about it, and it leads to my first highlight of the episode. I have two. My first highlight of the episode, which is the cutaway gag where SpongeBob has this weird feeling somehow that he can sense that Patchy and Potty are arguing. And Mr. Krabs comes in, and he's like, "SpongeBob, what's wrong?" "I don't know, Mr. Krabs, but I have the strangest feeling that somewhere a pirate and a parrot are arguing about me, and the parrot is winning." It's such a weird cutaway gag, but it's so funny because it's so random, and it's the only time in the whole episode we're actually in the normal SpongeBob universe. So for that little bit of time, and the fact that it's just for a cutaway gag, they put in all that work into that animation, is hilarious. So as they keep arguing, Patchy transitions us, the audience, over to the actual episode, which is about SpongeGar, Patar, and Squat, the prehistoric versions of SpongeBob, Patrick, and Squidward, respectively, waking up, doing their daily lives as cavemen. Sorry, not caveman, cavemen. And they end up discovering fire because the storm cloud starts raining out of nowhere. And they start clapping when they because it keeps turning the rain on and off, which is really funny. And then they end up clapping too many times and causing it to strike lightning at a log, which creates fire. And it's the first time they've come across fire. And then before this part, there is actually another really funny part I want to talk about. It's not my highlight, but it is very funny. Is when SpongeGar wakes up in the morning and he uses a rock to wake up every morning instead of his normal alarm clock. Well, the alarm clock comes from a bunch of prehistoric fish sitting on a cliff. Yeah, they got creative with this one, to say the least. And he wakes up, and then it turns out that he uses his pants as a blanket, which is kind of funny. So he folds up his pants, and then he takes Gary out for a walk, and Gary is massive. And he starts leaving slime all over Squat's yard as he starts to wake up. And Squog goes out to yell at them, and he's like, "Wait a minute." And then it shows a little imagination of him getting absolutely pummeled by Gary, because Gary is massive in this one. Like, literally, he's as big as SpongeBob's pineapple, if not even bigger. And then he thinks about it. He runs back inside to his house. He grabs one of the two clubs he has laying around, and the other one cries because it gets ignored. And then he goes out to yell at SpongeGar, and then he starts sliding around on the slime. And it's so funny, because not only does it happen once, but then it happens a second time. And SpongeBob's sitting there like, what is he trying to say? Sponga, no tavari Gary puka. It's so funny. And then the first time, Squat ends up crashing into Patar's rock. And Patar is sitting there very confused, even though Squat is completely covered in Gary's slime because he slammed into Patrick's rock. Not Patrick, Patar, sorry. And then Patar hugs him when he realizes it is Squog, and then he hugs him nearly to the point of crushing him to death. And then he sees SpongeGar, he puts down Squog, and the two physically harm themselves as entertainment. And there's an especially really funny highlight where, also very gruesome, where Patar takes the bottom roof of his mouth, puts it over his head, and rips a hole through it. Like, that's gruesome, but it's done for comedic effect. It's not done to gross the viewer out like it is in something like House Fancy, for example. So, yeah. That's how that goes, pretty much. And then the second time, Squidward Squat ends up falling around on the slime. He crashes into his own house. And then that's when they discover fire, and of course Squog immediately burns himself when he puts his hand in the fire. But then Patar and SpongeGar put their hands in the fire for a very long time, and it's a very delayed reaction, but like 7 or 10 seconds later, then they start screaming out in pain. And then Patar puts salt on his arm and starts gnawing it. And then SpongeGar gets an idea of maybe getting something to roast over the fire. And then, well, initially he wasn't even going to use the fire at all. He was going to just use it as a snack. And he has like these giant flowers, I think. I'm not sure exactly what they are. But he ends up tripping over one of Squog's many, many legs and throws it in the fire. Squog gets angry and starts yelling at SpongeGar. And then Patar tries to eat Squog's arm, only for Squog to smack him upside the head with a stick. And then after a very weird moment, sorry, computer refuses to stay off. Give me a minute. I'm sorry. Sorry about that. Go to sleep. Yeah, sorry about that. I don't know why my computer keeps turning itself on all the time. It's so annoying. Anywho, after a very weird moment that people say is funny, but me, I don't get the joke. SpongeGar gets the idea of roasting the flowers over the fire. And after Squog hits him with the stick, SpongeGar then takes the stick, pulls out the roasted flour, eats it. Then he starts jumping around, realizing, oh my god, this tastes really good. And then he hands the other one to Squog, and Squog eats it, does the same thing as SpongeGar did. And then another hilarious part, that's my second highlight of the episode, is the first time that SpongeGar walked over to get the food, Squog pretty much called him an amoeba because he's a manga, and there's a picture of an amoeba in the speech bubble, and it's so funny. And then he follows that up as soon as he realizes what SpongeGar was actually doing, like, Taylor Fool SpongeGar, Taylor Fool SpongeGar, not Dumbo. And then they put a picture of Albert Einstein's head in the speech bubble. And then they all eat and eat and eat and eat and eat. But then there comes the matter of who gets to keep the fire. And then they start fighting, and SpongeGar and Squat start smacking each other with their clubs. Patar tries to get away, and then just a bunch of crazy hijinks ensue before the rain finally douses the flame. And once the flame is doused, then SpongeGar and Patar cry and are sorry for fighting. And then Squad's about to smash both of them when he then gets struck by a lightning bolt, like, So Taka Yakuza! Ah! Davangado. Yeah, it's so funny. But yeah, that's pretty much how the animated parts go. Now finishing up with the Patchy segments. Patchy and Potty are still arguing. And Patchy first argues that starting a fire with 2 sticks... Sorry, allergies. And then he ends up not being able to get the wood to burn, but then Potty shoots it with his little lasers on his whole futuristic pack, and he's like, laser technology, score one for the future. Sorry, I can't do a Potty voice. And then for the second attempt, Patchy brings out a caveman that he calls Cavey. And what's funny here is that it's actually played by Bill Fagerbaki, Patrick's voice actor. And then, of course, as we all know, Patchy's played by Tom Kenny, who's SpongeBob's voice actor. So it's like the real live version of SpongeBob and Patrick together in the same scene. But it's just them portraying different time periods. And it's funny. And then Potty brings in a robot, which is supposed to be SpongeBob. And Patchy's sitting there like, where do you keep getting all this stuff? And then the caveman and the robot fight. And then Patchy gives up and just waits outside. And then Potty is able to diffuse the tension by telling him that things are better, come back in, you're pleasantly surprised. And then we get the When Worlds Collide song, which at first I hated because I didn't get the joke, but now that I get the joke, it's kind of funny. And I don't think it's like one of the best SpongeBob songs ever, but it's funny. It is so funny and it works in the scene. I especially love the part where they put in a little clip from SB129 when Squidward's going like, future! It's so funny. And then after the song ends, Patchy comes to realize that the past and the present are both cool. And then, to show no hard feelings, Potty gets Patchy a gift. A dinosaur. That starts to eat him, and then it realizes, and then apparently then it's just tickling him. While Patchy's getting eaten or tickled, Potty's sitting there with popcorn like, this is great. And then, the ending's weird. So, overall, this is a very enjoyable special, very creative, very unique, and very interesting in the worlds and realms of SpongeBob. Sure, it's not the first time we've seen SpongeBob in the prehistoric age, because, again, in SB129 they had primitive SpongeBob and Patrick, but here they really get to go all out with the concept, and it works so well. Like, seeing all the ways that they're able to take all these things that are normally in episodes, like SpongeBob waking up or Squidward yelling out the window, or how the houses are designed, or stuff like that. They do a great job making all that prehistoric. There's even another really funny scene where they have Mr. Krabs as, well, a normal regular crab that's just about money, 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 money. And then SpongeGar, with no hesitation, just stomps on him. And then he also makes a big sand Krabby Patty, which is hilarious, but doesn't quite make sense, but you know what, it's fine. And there's also a lot of other really funny moments throughout the episode, but I'm already dang near 20 minutes, and I haven't even gotten to the parts that don't quite work. So what don't I like about this special? Well, it does feel a bit long-winded. The patchy segments, while entertaining, do feel a bit rushed, and I feel like I know that's kind of the intent, but considering some of the other patchy segments I've seen, like the really good one that was in Christmas Who, and the really funny one that was in Shanghai, it's not as good, and it does feel like filler. And it does kind of drag the episode down a bit, and the primitive speech, while very funny, there were a few times when it's just like, what are you saying, brah? And then there are a few other little segments that just go on and on and on, like when they eat and eat and eat and eat and eat, and it's so many reused frames of animation. And that part does kind of bug me a bit, because it does feel like they did that for padding. They could have easily made that scene a bit better, or maybe used a time card. But yeah, that's really my only big complaints with this episode, and I do feel like the pacing is very slow, and then it does pick up in the second half once they do discover fire. But those are all really minor inconveniences. This is still a really good special. Not great, but far better than the piece of crap we looked at 2 days ago that was Party Pooper Pants. So my final verdict for SpongeBob BC is going to be a 17 out of 20. It is a very good special. Not quite great, though, because it does have some problems with padding and pacing. That's really my only complaint, though. The rest of it's really good. So, yep, that's going to do it for this very long, almost 20-minute review of SpongeBob BC. I hope you guys enjoyed. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. And keep at it, guys, because we only have 6 more of these videos to go. And tomorrow we'll be taking a look at one of my favorite episodes of the season, Clams, and a very meh episode in The Great Snail Race. So tomorrow we'll be back to normal 2 episodes. And yeah, that's all I got. Thank you guys for watching. Like, share, and subscribe. Do all that algorithmic garbage to help the channel grow. And I'll see you guys tomorrow for those reviews. So until then, thanks for watching. I'm Jackson Lab Animation Station. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.